We're going to start by getting some documents open here. So I'm just going to go to File and Open. And I'll choose 2 to work with. One of the things that InDesign and Illustrator share with Photoshop is its navigation. So in Illustrator or InDesign, you may have been learning to work with the key commands, the keyboard, to zoom in and out, and that's good. We want to use the key commands as much as possible in order to work as fluidly as we can, especially in Photoshop because we are often zoomed in a fair bit. So to zoom in, we can hold space down and then the command key, and we can click in, or we can click and drag out. So if you just drag back and forth, you'll see you can zoom in and out. You can also add the Alt key or Option key as well, and that just brings up the immediate zoom out. So if you are clicking and you want to zoom out, do Space Command Alt or Option, and to click in, you do Space Command. Then you want to do Command 0. So that's similar to Illustrator and InDesign as well. So Command 0 will just reset the page so we're seeing the entire document. And in InDesign, one of the things we do try to do is default back to that main selection cursor. The same with Illustrator as well. If we've used a tool, we want to essentially put it down and then go back to where we're ready to start with a new tool. In InDesign and Illustrator, that's quite good with the main selection cursor because we need to actually select something to see if we're doing something inadvertently or by accident. It's pretty difficult with that tool, that main selection tool, because you do have to click on something. In Photoshop, it's a little different. That main tool that we really want to default back to and make a habit of is the Move tool. However, if you do have a live layer, and we'll make this layer live, this first layer, by double clicking on it and just saying, okay, that's now a live layer. I can accidentally click and drag and move something. So we do have to be a little more careful with Photoshop in that regard, but it is still good to form that habit in all 3 programs to always be defaulting back to your main cursor. And you'll notice I kind of do it even when I've already done it. It's such a habit for me working with the 3 programs that I do default back and kind of make sure I've got everything put down before I start again. It is a good habit, so it's worth trying to be aware of that and do it. Now, with InDesign and Illustrator, we're doing, of course, the zooming in and zooming out and resetting the page with Command 0. But we have in Photoshop, we're working with pixels, and we're working with images that are of a certain quality. An InDesign and Illustrator document isn't necessarily in itself of any quality. Once we get things in, we may notice higher and lower quality of images and so on. But in Photoshop, we want to do what's called image assessment. We really want to know before we start working what we're working with. There's a few ways that we do that. Upon opening a document, I've got 2 open here, we want to first assess the image just to see how much quality it's got through zooming in. And we're going to hold Option and Command down. So I'll hold Option, Command, holding them down, I'll press 0. And we see that the image zooms in. What it's zooming into is actual pixels. It's essentially zooming into the highest quality of the image before things start to get fuzzy, before it zooms in past its perfect clarity. So this one zoomed in a fair bit. If I go back to Command 0 and I do Option Command, we see that it zoomed in a fair bit. And that's not really a specific way of assessing the image, because the image may have been altered and what's called upsampled, but it does show us how the quality, and we can see even on screen it's pretty high quality. This image is a little fuzzy, so it may have been upsampled at one time, but it's not too bad. So I'll do Command 0 again. I'm going to try this other image, I had not done Command 0 on this, so if it's high resolution, Option Command 0 may even do a further zoom in. So Option Command 0, and it goes a little further. So we can see this too is a pretty high quality image, although it looks like it's had some things done to it in terms of contrast, and it's not the original photograph. So it has some changes to it, but for our use, it's pretty high quality. So I'll do Command 0 again to reset that. So as far as navigation goes, again, zooming in and out, Space Command to zoom in, click or drag, Space Command Option to zoom out, click or drag, and Command 0 to reset that image, and trying to default back to that main move tool as a default cursor to let go of all your other tools if you have previously used one. And then doing the image assessment, doing that Option Command 0 to zoom in. About further image assessment, I'll do Command 0 again. More accurate image assessment is what we really want to do. So if we go to the image menu, we're going to find out a few things. Before I go there, I'm just going to note down at the bottom here, you'll see in the lower left, you'll see essentially what the file size is. It says the document, and this one is showing 9.66 megabytes. The other one is showing the same. And what that's telling us is it's just a reference of how much space this document is taking up on our computer. That's a good tool to use in terms of, knowing the file size is indicating that as an image, 9.5 megabytes, that's pretty big. So it's probably good quality, good dimensions, but we want to be even more specific. We do have a properties window that we can go to as well. And the properties window is going to show us a few things in terms of the dimensions. So this is showing us the actual dimensions, the area of that image. And right now it's showing in pixels. I have my rulers showing here. So I can, if you want to have those on or off, you can do Command R or go to the View menu and Rulers. And this showing in pixels right now, if I want to see what it is in inches, I can right click on that ruler and change it to inches. So it's showing us that this image is almost 21 inches wide by just over 31 inches high. So right now we're just getting a little bit of the information about this, but we want to get all of the information. So we're going to go to the image menu and we'll go to image size. And this is something that you do go to quite frequently in Photoshop. So we'll go image size, and now this is going to tell us the whole story of this image. If before we received it, it was upsampled or downsampled, meaning upsampled, it would be told it's a higher resolution than it actually was, so it would add information to it that it didn't have. It kind of guesses. We wouldn't know. So we really need to just assess first with our eyes, with that Option Command 0, how high the quality is on an image. And we notice this one's slightly fuzzy, but it's not too bad. It would be good for our use. But we want to confirm size-wise that it truly is good for our uses. In print, our print resolution, the standard print resolution, is 300 dpi. Right now this image is set at 72 dpi. So we want to see, what are we going to get out of this at 300? We need to know the size that we're going to be using this image for, and we'll see that in a little bit in terms of making a magazine cover. However, we want to see what can we get out of this at 300 dpi. So from the top here at image size, that's what we see down in the document note on the window of the image itself, which it would be preferable if this said file size instead of doc, and in the image size if it said file size, because that's what it's referring to. The dimensions itself are actually referring to the file size, or sorry, the image size. So that can be a little misleading. When it says image size 9.5 megabytes, that's actually referring to the space that file is taking up. And then we have that little bit of mixed messaging where it says image size up here and document down in the actual image window. So that's the space it's taking up. The actual dimensions of this are what it's showing here in dimensions. So that is, if we could pull that out of the computer and put it on the desk, that would be 20.83 inches by 31.25. And I can change the dimensions here to anything I want. It just lets us change it. So typically you're leaving that at pixels, but then you're setting the one that you want to have in the image size down here. Now there's a couple things to work with here, because the resample often throws people off. Why is it resample? Why is it check marked? So we'll look at that in terms of making sure of what we can get from this out of a 300 dpi. So the first thing I'm going to do as an assessment is deselect resample. And we'll see what resample does in a moment. So I'll deselect resample, and then in the resolution, I'm going to change that to 300. Now what's going to happen, because I deselected resample, it's going to adjust the dimensions, the width and the height, according to what I put in that resolution. Right now it's saying there's 72 pixels per inch, per line inch on this image. So when I change it to 300, it's going to say if you want 300 pixels per line inch, I'm going to have to make the image much smaller to accommodate that. So I'll enter 300, and it's telling me if you want standard print resolution for this image, the image is going to have to be 5 inches wide by 7.5 max. That's our maximum. So technically, although we're going to be working with this image for a mock magazine cover, it's actually quite low in resolution. It wouldn't be adequate for a magazine cover. And if we were to crop even down to a portion of this image, it would be much less. So this is pretty much a good resolution for a small flyer or even a business card size. So overall, it's pretty low in resolution. We'd want really triple or more to work with this adequately. But that's telling us what you're going to get from standard resolution. Now, if we chose upsample or resample, if we clicked on that, that would allow us to actually change the dimensions maintaining this resolution. So if I needed this at 11 inches wide, for example, it would let me, because I select resample, it would let me now change the inches. Resolution rules in Photoshop. So we always adjust the resolution, and then if we are going to resample in this case, which is something we do want to avoid, but I'll explain that in a moment. If we wanted to resample, we do the resolution first, then we do the dimensions. So if I enter 11 here, with these linked, though now they're unlinked, so it will only change the width. But we certainly want to try to keep images correct in their ratio, so we're going to keep that linked. I'll change that to 11, and we can see it will change the height to 16.5. Of course, I forgot to, I deselected that and I lost my 300 setting there. So I'm going to go back, I'm going to undo that and set the resolution again, because the resolution, it rules. Now I can do 11. So we have 11 and 16.5 and 300. So that is upsampling. We can also see that the dimensions went up, of course, to reflect the size change, and the image size has increased as well because we've added more information into it. We've added more pixels. That's the problem with resampling. We've added more pixels that didn't exist. So what Photoshop is doing is looking at the image and saying, you need this many more pixels per inch. You're adding a lot of information, so it's guessing. It's looking at the pixels and it's kind of saying, between those two existing pixels, I'm going to put a new one that's similar. And it does that throughout the entire document. So when we do that, I'll say OK. It's going to take a moment, but it's putting in information that it never had. And with imagery, that's not a good idea because it's going to lessen the quality. It'll increase the file size, and it will also increase the amount of information in it, but it's actually going to come out looking a lot more fuzzy. And it's taking a moment because we are adding so much information into that. That's what makes this image really too low in resolution to adequately use for a proper print job. So we'll see once it's done. We'll zoom in on it. We'll do a little bit of image assessment, and we'll see that it doesn't quite look very good. This image would probably work okay because it's single color for the most part. But if I do Option Command 0, we can see that it's pretty fuzzy. We get away with it a little bit on this one due to the color and even the nature of the image being quite linear, and there isn't too much strict detail. There is detail, but there's not a lot of detail that, it's not too complex. So we don't want to do that. With images, what we do want to do, I'm going to undo this and go back to my image size. What we want to do is downsample when we can. So this image being pretty low in resolution doesn't give us a lot to downsample to because we don't have a small project with it. But we're going to pretend for a moment. I'll deselect resample. Now what downsampling is ideal because we're removing the information. We're taking away pixels. So we're saying you have too much, and that's the ideal position to be in with imagery. You're always trying to get images that are far higher in resolution and even size than you need. So if I was doing this for, let's say, a business card, so I'll set this at 300 again. I'll click resample, and then the width of a business card is 3.5. So now what I've done is essentially cut it in half. I've removed about half of the information from that. We can see the image size reflects that, and of course our dimensions reflect it as well. So now I say, okay, we've created a smaller image, but it still retained all of its quality. It had too much quality, so it got rid of that. I'll undo that as well. So that's image assessment. We want to know what we have, what we're working with, and be able to determine, can this suit the size we need? So going to that image size in the image menu, telling it we need to work, in this case, we're doing print, we need to work with 300 DPI. So I deselect resample. I say, what can I get out of 300? And it's going to tell me you can get a 5x7 essentially. You can do a flyer with it. And that's it. So with that, we need to either go pick another image, or we have to make that decision. Do we upsample this? And we have to be very careful upsampling because it is adding that information that we don't have.